What's up, gamer? Welcome to the video. I hope things are going well for you. My name is Koobs, and today I want to talk a little bit about Feixiao. And not just Feixiao in the general sense, but more specifically on a Super Break composition. See, Feixiao has been out in Honkai Star Rail for a little over 2 weeks now, and I'm sure that you've seen plenty of videos out there that are talking about Feixiao and her best team comp, which typically includes characters like Robin, Topaz, and Aventurine. But one thing that I haven't really seen are videos going over Feixiao and her ability to function on Super Break team. So before we begin, I want to establish a little bit of a baseline for these showcases. We're going to be taking on Kafka in stage 12 of the MoC, and for our first run we're going to have Feixiao paired with Hunt March 7th, who, the new version of March 7th in my opinion, is just an absolute superstar. Really appreciate what they did to update her character, maintain her relevancy in the meta, and overall just her look I think is spot on. So we'll be pairing Feixiao with March, and we're going to have our dependent or constant variables here of Ranmei and Gallagher. They'll be operating on both teams. Gallagher is a really great sustain unit for Feixiao. He can attack really frequently, especially when you factor in his ultimate. He's getting 2 attacks back to back, and he's also going to generate a lot of skill points for our team, which for this particular composition we don't really need a whole lot of skill points. But if you were using somebody else who you wanted to spam their skill a little bit more, and you were using Gallagher as your sustain unit, you'll have a lot of success there. When we talk about Ranmei, I mean just an ultimate universal sustain unit, pretty much good on any team composition in my opinion. But specifically when we look at Feixiao, she can add the weakness break efficiency to Feixiao's ultimate, which is going to get more overall damage from the ultimate and also from her entire kit in general. And I do think that it's important for me to leave the disclaimer here that my Ranmei is E2, and I have her signature light cone. So as much as this is a Feixiao showcase or a March 7th showcase, it's very much a Ranmei showcase. So hopefully we can overall get a good idea of a somewhat relatable look at Feixiao and her ability to function in a diversity of team compositions. I find that Feixiao is a character that can really thrive in just about any situation. While she might have a best-in-slot team, you know, featuring Robin and Topaz and Aventurine, I don't think that she needs any one particular character to be paired alongside her for her to make a significant impact as a DPS unit. I think that she functions really well in a wide variety of teams, and I think that that's one of the things that kind of adds to her overall value. When I look at the overall longevity of a character in Honkai Star Rail, you're usually looking at how they can maintain relevancy down the line. A lot of the DPS units that we've seen recently have the ability to implant a weakness on the enemy, or they can just do toughness bar damage regardless of the enemy's weakness type. And so I think that them having that added to Feixiao's kit is going to add a lot of benefit to her overall lifespan in this game. I think that if we kind of predict that there will likely be new support units added to the game that will focus on buffing follow-up attacks, as well as support units that will focus on Super Break, that when we take a look at how she functions in a Super Break team, you'll kind of get an idea of how well this character can age. And that's one of the things that I'm really appreciative of as a free-to-play and low-spender player myself. So we round out our first stage. Massive hit there by March 7th, and we have a 2-cycle clear. So now we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at how Feixiao functions on our Super Break team. So as we get started with our Super Break team composition, I do think that it's important for us to recognize that this stage is really kind of leaning towards Harmony MC's strengths. We have a lot of enemies that are weak to imaginary damage, and so that's going to really kind of favor our team in this particular showcase. However, we don't get any ice or fire weak enemies, so in a sense it kind of balances itself out. Ranmei and Gallagher aren't going to be able to do any toughness damage to any of the enemies in this particular stage, but we are still using them for their damage output when we get the enemy into the weakness broken state. We're taking advantage of the super break damage with both of those characters, so they are kind of adding to the overall DPS output, with Ranmei sometimes dealing close to 30,000 on her basic attack, and Gallagher can put out some pretty solid damage once the enemy has been weakness broken by Feixiao or Harmony MC. Overall, I really like the synergy of this team, and I'm a huge fan of Shui Yi. I think that Shui Yi is a lot of fun to play and has gotten far better since the introduction of the Harmony MC. I've got another video on the channel from when Super Break was first introduced, and you can see a comparison of an Acheron team versus a Shui Yi team and how she's able to more or less compete and hold her own in the same sort of a format of this sort of a showcase. And I, like, initially when seeing Feixiao's kit and how her ultimate functions in a very similar way to Shui Yi's, I immediately knew that I wanted to try her on a Super Break composition. Now, I do think that it's important for me to recognize that the build that I'm using for Feixiao in this Super Break team is more of a hybrid focused build, so we do still have pretty significant crit rate and crit damage, as well as the break effect. We're getting a lot of break effect added to our characters just because of the overall team composition. The Harmony MC is giving a bunch through one of her traces, and she's also got, when she uses her ultimate, she's going to give some break effect to the team. Ranmei is giving some as a baseline, and then she's also wearing the Watchmaker set, so that's going to give even more. So you might have caught a glimpse there. I showed how much break effect Feixiao had before using her ultimate. She was at around 316, but she's coming into this fight at around 146, I believe. But she has close to 90% crit rate, and she has about 115 crit damage. So even before the enemy is broken, she's able to do a good amount of damage on her own. And so in that sense, the main thing that I want to recognize is that it might be difficult for some players to get the proper relics for having break effect and crit rate and crit damage. So that might be something that takes a little bit more time, as opposed for looking at just crit rate and crit damage, or just looking for break effect. And I was fortunate enough to be able to just kind of pull the relics that I needed from my Shui Yi for this particular showcase. Big hit there by the Harmony MC, and then the MoC Turbulence is going to close things out, and again, we've got a 2-cycle clear. So right on par with that first team, and with that first team we had March 7th acting as a sub DPS, really doing some pretty serious damage of her own. So like I said, here are some of the stats for Feixiao. We've gone with Cruising on the Stellar Sea as the light cone, so once the enemy is below 50% health, we're actually at over 100% crit rate. And we've also got the Iron Cavalry set, which is going to give us the ability to ignore some of the enemy's defense when we're doing super break damage. Like I mentioned, Ranmei is E2 with her signature light cone. Harmony MC, when it comes to Harmony MC, we're using Memories of the Past, which is at S3, so that's a gacha light cone. It might be difficult for some players to get. A good alternative would be Meshing Cogs, because it gives you that similar effect of the added energy when you attack an enemy, and that's the main thing that we want to use it for. It's going to help us get our ultimate up in the first turn. And then we've also got the Talia ornament set on, and we're at 134 speed, but since we're paired with Ranmei, the 10% speed boost that we're getting is actually going to put her at 145 speed to activate that extra 20%. Gallagher, pretty straightforward build. I'm using What Is Real. I've seen some people gravitating towards Quid Pro Quo, which I think is a great choice. And you could even use, I think it's called multiplication, which gives some extra speed. Whatever works for you. When we look at our Feixiao crit build, we're at 76 over 160. Both of these could be a little bit higher. We're using the same light cone, which is going to give us that extra 16% crit rate when the enemy's health is low. So gets us to about 92%. And then for March, we're actually using the light cone Sleep Like the Dead. This is going to give us 30% crit damage, but it can also add 36% crit rate if a crit is missed. So I wanted to showcase this a little bit here. Before this attack, we don't have the buff activated. We're going to do our enhanced basic attack. On the very first tick of damage, we actually miss our crit, and that activates that secondary effect. So you can see here. And then all subsequent attacks of that enhanced basic are automatic crits at that point, and then that also extends to her next turn. So pretty solid light cone if you happen to have it and you haven't really had much of a use for it before now. Seems to work pretty well with March. You could also use something like swordplay would be great, and there's probably some other options out there, but that's what I've gone with. So that's going to pretty much wrap up our builds, bring us to the end of the video. I really appreciate you for being here. Hopefully you were able to see the value of Feixiao beyond just a follow-up unit. She's excellent as a super break team. I have been and always will be Koobs. Peace and love, gamers.